Welcome to An Unconventional Life, a podcast where we share stories about the crazy 1% out there who earned their doctoral degrees and then went on to use them in crazy, cool, unique, and unconventional ways. Here's your host, astrophysicist turned teacher, author, dissertation coach, and more, Dr. Russell Strickland.
Hi, this is Dr. Russell Strickland, your host of An Unconventional Life podcast, and I have with me here today Dr. Justin Goldston. Dr. Goldston is an assistant professor of project and supply chain management at Penn State University, but he has decades of experience working with organizations such as Intel and Siemens and Blue Buffalo. He's going to talk to us a whole lot about his unconventional path in both obtaining his own doctoral degree and how he has leveraged his experience in business to help with his role in academia. So, Dr. Goldston, welcome. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks a lot for having me, Dr. Strickland.
You're welcome. Just to let everybody know, this episode is brought to you by Dissertation Done. So if you're a dissertation student, or a doctoral student, and you're about to start working on your dissertation, maybe you are in the middle of your dissertation, you might be struggling or so frustrated that you're ready to pack it in and quit on the whole thing. Wherever you are in the process, why don't you reach out to us at dissertationdone.com/done and see if you might be a good candidate for our Fast Track Your Dissertation coaching program. We help get students through the dissertation process a good year or two faster than their peers in their cohort. And if that's something you're interested in, reach out to us and let us know. And if perhaps you've gotten past the dissertation at this point, you're out there living your unconventional life and you want to build your authority platform, share your expertise with the world, best way to do that is by not only having a first name doctor, but also being a published author. We'll take you from the blank page to a published book in less time than you could imagine. And you can find out more at dissertationdone.com/book. So that was the commercial. Dr. Goldston, again, welcome. And thanks for joining me here today.
Yes, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
So as we were talking about briefly before we went on the air, you mentioned that you have been in industry for a number of years and then decided to pursue your doctoral degree and go in academia. Tell folks a little bit about your background and what motivated you to decide to pursue your doctoral degree.
So I would say, like a lot of viewers, I have an unconventional path. Everyone has a story. Yep. I would say that I was completing my master's degree at Penn State University in supply chain management, and we were working on a group project. And we're working on a group project for our capstone course. And one of our first professors walked into our breakout room, mm-hmm. and he said, "You're the supply chain consultant, right?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "What do you think about coming to my capstone course and sharing your background and sharing the opportunities that are out in the field?" "Oh, absolutely." So I went and spoke with that capstone class and asked them a question. So I asked when I started guest lecturing, I always asked the question of, okay, what are you going to do with this degree? And Penn State, all kinds of answers. I went and guest lectured at Rutgers, asked a question, all kinds of answers. I went to Morgan State University, which is a historically black college and university. I also went to a historically black college and university at North Carolina A&T for my undergrad. So these students were 2 weeks away from graduating their master's program. And I asked the same exact question: what are you going to do with this degree? Crickets. And it frustrated me in that, personally, coming from HBCU, I was upset and frustrated, but also I felt like those students were underserved. Right? I think that teaching the curriculum is just one aspect of it. Being a mentor is the most important aspect as an instructor, and that kind of led me in the path to say, okay, I'm going to share I have been very successful in my career. I've had mentors throughout my entire career, and I'm going to share my knowledge, within my goal is to share my knowledge within higher education. So that began my path in pursuing my doctoral degree. Initially, I felt that I was just going to teach part-time and still consult. you know, and still be within the consulting. So kind of do that 50-50 split, if you will. But as you progress, so for those within the doctoral program, as you progress, you're going to grow.
Right.
You know, and the teaching and the more people, because I was adjuncting throughout my doctoral program, and whenever I was seeing those individuals I was impacting, whenever they would call, you know, reach out to me and say, "Professor, you know, you reached out and connected me with this person on LinkedIn. I just got offered a job." You know, that is 10 times better than that salary that you're getting in consulting, right? So that kind of made my transition into higher education full time. But I would say that unlike others within this higher education path, I still feel that I need to stay close within the industry. Because in my industry in supply chain management, and I focus on technology and sustainability, and because technology changes almost weekly, right? You know, I have to stay close to the industry to understand the developments. I have to stay close to the industry to understand what these hiring managers want from these undergraduate students, these graduate students, and these doctoral students, you know, in research-based institutions. So I think that, I mean, that's my path. I think that a lot of my peers kind of had the same story. Okay. But I would say that as it pertains to my doctoral journey, I would say that you know, your services is what I did want to pack. I was one of those that wanted to pack it up. That's why I smiled. You know, I wanted to pack it up more than one time. And you know, that mentor is worth every single penny. And you're going to have a cheerleader. You're going to have someone to hold you accountable, and they are stakeholders in your success. Right. So I would say for anyone listening to this episode that, you know, reach out to Dr. Strickland and you know, work with him to be a mentor. I'm not plugging it. I'm just telling the truth.
Well, I appreciate that, Dr. Goldston, and certainly find a mentor. There are lots of ways that you can do that. We're awesome. We're excellent at what we do. But I'm not going to tell you that I'm the only person that can help you. I'm not even going to tell you I can help you because it might not be a good fit. Right. We always start off by talking with a student and making sure that we connect and resonate, and what your goals are match with what I do. But find a mentor. It's very important. A lot of doctoral students, for some reason, they like to put on the Superman cape and act like Hercules, and I'm Atlas holding the whole world up on his shoulders. So I'm gonna mix a bunch of metaphors here. But it's not like that, you know. Yes. It's when you get to this level, it's about getting things done. It's not about doing them. You know, at some level, you know, if you're you know, sweeping floors or digging ditches or something like that, you got to be the one out there doing it, and that's really difficult. Obviously, in the academic realm, when we're students, you still have to do your dissertation, but it's not about the work of doing it. It's about getting it done. So if you can find someone that can help you shortcut the very painful learning experience of not knowing what you're doing, and get to, I tell folks, you don't know what you're doing yet. And if you say, I don't know what I'm doing, that's like despondent and not very optimistic. But if you say, I don't know what I'm doing yet, that's a whole another realm. Well, let's get you from, I don't know what I'm doing, to yet as soon as possible. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I would also add to that and saying that, you know, and I know that a number of the listeners would be coming from different institutions. They have different, you know, different expectations, different rubrics and things like that, but trust the system. I say most importantly, trust the system, because sitting there first rodeo, you know, and looking back, and I say that now looking back on it. Because I was that doctoral student kicking and screaming. I was probably the loudest one kicking and screaming. But now that I look back on it in academia and higher education, I will say that, you know, from someone who did it, trust the system.
Yeah. So I might tend to argue with you just a little bit. I will say work with the system. I'm a little bit more renegade or distrustful because we've seen, you know, not every committee member is a perfect committee member.
Committee members, yes, but
so there are some times where the system doesn't work perfectly, And it's good if you have somebody in your corner who knows, hey, this is a time when you need to just do what they're telling you. And this is a time when you need to start talking to somebody about getting some intervention, some help, some support, because the system's not working quite correctly.
Right.
But I would agree with what, the spirit of what Dr. Goldston is saying. Don't fight the system. You're out there trying to convince them to give you a degree, and you're going to do that when you meet with their approval. So try to reach the point where they approve of the work that you've done as quickly as possible. And then if you want to go out and change the world, you don't have to answer to anybody at that point. When your first name is doctor, you got a lot of doors that are open and available to you, and you can do things the way that you want.
Yes, I was about to say the exact same thing, and that's essentially what I'm currently doing right now. Where my dissertation was focused on critical success factors in ERP systems and small and medium enterprises,
right?
And I was gonna do sustainability because those are my passions. Supply chain sustainability and emerging technologies are my passions.
Right.
But because I stayed in that, because I worked, for so many years within that enterprise application industry, you can see it as low hanging fruit, if you will.
Right.
Right.
And
there is still a gap within that discipline. There's a huge gap within that discipline, especially in small and medium enterprises. So I would say that, that was one of the critical factors for me getting out quickly.
Yeah.
Because
I like to tell students to make sure that you're utilizing your assets. If you've got connections and you can get data because of those connections, use those connections.
Yes.
If you've got an affinity for an industry, you know something about it, be careful. Don't tell your committee you know everything and they don't know anything, because, again, you're looking to get their approval. But if you have an affinity for an industry, you should use it, because that will help you. It's just getting you a little bit further down the path before the starting gun goes off, so to speak.
Right. Absolutely.
So, and I think you mentioned something earlier I think is very important too. You alluded to your reason why you went into the doctoral degree program, and that is very important. Make sure that you have a reason why when and you know it, that it's on your bulletin board, so to speak. You got a sticky note right there on the monitor. This is the reason why I'm doing it.
Yes.
But your reason why was to serve other people, and I find that that's a very powerful thing that a lot of doctoral students share as well. So figure out who it is that you're going to serve and how you're going to serve them. And remember that every day that you spend as a doctoral student is another day that you're not serving those people. Get through this process so that you can do what you're called to do.
Yes. And I would say from a financial end, one eye-opening thing one of my peers did was he took our tuition and did the calculation and said, okay, every day that you're continuing with this dissertation, it's costing you this much per day.
Right.
And so instead of putting my why, I put how much I'm paying every single day.
It's costing you $75. Is it worth it? Because it's an investment, so it's not a fair comparison. But if you think about how much you put into tuition, and then you say, well, how much would I spend on an entertainment budget each day? What you put in tuition is usually a whole lot higher than that. So if you think that being a doctoral student is fun, just remember that this is your entertainment for right now, and you're spending a whole lot more on your entertainment budget than you usually would. Now, when you come to the back end, it's an investment. You get to start reaping those rewards. But there's no reason to pay extra for that degree. It's going to be worth the same when you graduate, regardless as to whether you spend a year or a year and a half or 2 or 3 working on your dissertation.
Mm-hmm. And I would always, and people say, oh, I just received my master's, a couple years ago, and I'm not going to invest this much money. I say, look, I achieved my ROI in maybe 4 months. And that might sound extreme. But it's the truth.
That's
because,
awesome.
And I would say that one of the reasons how I did that was because I started with so I knew what the end goal was going to be when I was going to look to defend. And I started just pounding the pavement. I started reaching out to these institutions. I started getting all these, reaching out and getting all these adjunct roles, because I knew that, I'm making a transition. Initially when I started a program, I was going to do that 50-50, but I would say maybe 3 years in, I say, okay, this is it. And that was always kind of a fear of mine of, the fear of unknown. I've been comfortable in the industry with a very good salary for a number of years, and one of my mentors said, Justin, higher education don't pay like consulting. Right. Let's just be real. but I had that idea in mind, and I think I just say I'm doing a little bit better. But
so how did you mentioned that ROI? How did it come about so quickly? Like, do you have a story about that?
So I would say, and I will also say, I'm very transparent in that I probably applied to about 120 institutions before someone gave me a chance.
Yeah.
Right. Because I would say that, supply chain is very specialized as compared to business management or leadership and things like that. But this one is, so the Jack Welch Management Institute gave me a chance, and I showed my value to that institution. And then the second institution came in, and then the third institution came in. But within that institution, I created this supply chain program for Carolina Wesleyan College. And once that began to essentially, I would not really say spread, but once that awareness, I would say, came out, right, on platforms like LinkedIn, on articles on the internet and things like that. When these institutions were looking to revamp their supply chain courses or looking for supply chain professors, mm-hmm, those roles came rolling in. But right, I knew that a number of adjunct roles could not pay the bills. Could not be, I would say, could not be sustainable. I would say, that could pay the bills, but I mean, you could be essentially killing yourself working for 7 different institutions, right? So right. So I had that understanding.
Called full-time adjunct, and I did that for a while before I started dissertation done, and it's tough. You got a lot of freedom, a lot of flexibility, but there's so many responsibilities. Yes, that it does cut into the flexibility side of things.
Yes. So, I mean, I knew that the ultimate goal was to get a full-time role in higher education, and I was blessed to get a full-time role within higher education. And I'm living the dream right now. I mean, I always say that whenever I was in my second year, I always reflect and say, okay, so now you're thinking about making that transition to higher education. What's going to be your dream job?
Right.
Say Penn State. I mean, they're one of the top supply chain programs in the world, right? And fast forward, that's
and it tells you there's 2 things about that. Number 1 is you have a goal and you're strategic about it.
Yes.
It tends to be achievable. And number 2, someone can say, what's crazy Dr. Goldston doing teaching when he can be out there making a bunch of money? That's what you want to do, right? Right. And having that opportunity to make decisions as to what you want to do is the important part. So people who are listening who are saying, I wouldn't make that decision, that's fine. Right. Get to the point where you can make that decision, where you have those options and you can decide. That's when you're living your dream, like you said.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I say, it's not work. I love researching. I love finding new things. I love researching new things. Whenever I research, and I would say my teaching approach is completely, I would say I'm new school, yeah. New school higher education. I'm pretty much, excuse me?
What is the new school then?
I would say I kind of go away from the traditional PowerPoints and things like that. So within my course,
so your real school, when you talk about traditional PowerPoints, mine was traditional Blackboard, not login Blackboard, but like chalk dust on the Blackboard.
Yeah, I'm new
school. Real new school.
So Penn State is amazing in that you have that academic freedom where and I ran a test where I throw up the weekly learning objectives, and I apply what's going on in the world. I mean, we're in a perfect situation right now because the pandemic has increased the awareness of supply chain management. Yeah. So I have something to talk about every single day. But, I can pull up the weekly learning objectives And I could literally say, okay, this happened last week.
Right.
Let's talk about it. And we're talking about for an hour, 15 hour, 20 minutes. And they're able to apply it. They're able to remember it because they can tie it to exactly what's happening. And we talk about, project management, we talk about digital transformations. Who's better to talk about digital transformations than Tesla? They love it.
Yeah.
And because they are interested in these topics,
right.
They're bringing stuff to the classroom. They're looking ahead and Dr. Goldston, did you see what Tesla did last week? Oh, did you see what Bezos did last week? Whenever he's trying to launch his a new space program just because Elon did.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Very cool. So you mentioned trying to stay abreast of industry, and obviously there's only so much that you can do from reading newspaper articles and so forth. Mm-hmm. What are you doing to keep, to keep a foot on both sides of the aisle, so to speak, and keep the industry perspective fresh for the academic side of things?
I would say part of my responsibilities is to stay active in the industry and stay on LinkedIn. Because LinkedIn will give you that real-time pulse of the industry.
Yeah.
And collaborating with those thought leaders of the industry, that actually gives you visibility. That actually builds your brand.
Okay.
I was collaborating with I've been collaborating with the industry leaders before I even got into higher education. So that was just a continuation of what I've done in the industry. But now that individuals know that I teach at Penn State, a number of them are asking me and reaching out, to say, what are y'all doing in research in terms of sustainability? What are y'all doing in terms of this whole blockchain thing? What are y'all doing with, in terms of the pandemic? What is Penn State, Medical Center doing for the pandemic? So I get invited to a number of international conferences, especially because it's virtual. It's easy.
Yeah.
I just updated my my credentials for Penn State last night, and I was counting them. And I think from August to March of next year, I'll have 14 conferences I've spoken at.
Wow.
And so that would be the positive outcome. That would be the positive outcome of this pandemic, because you are collaborating with the world leaders,
right?
The world leaders in your industry, on particular topics. So, for example, I just did a sustainability and supply chain conference for the Asia Pacific region last week, and there was one individual that talked about modern day slavery. He did some work for the UN.
Okay.
And he said that, and I was sitting here working and listening. He said, now there is more slaves around the world in all time. And I said, let me listen to this thing. So that was very interesting to me, because that kind of falls into my sustainability, focus. And so Penn State also has what we refer to as an EDGE program, where we collaborate with institutions around the world. And we partner and we essentially blend our two courses, and we keep the syllabi for each one of our courses, but we align them to create a course-long project.
Okay.
So I'm going to be working with an individual from the UK, and she's teaching a consulting class. So I'm going to bring in my strategy class, and we're going to blend the two. And we're going to collaborate and try to figure out what course-long project's going to be aligned with both of our learning objectives and what's going to be applicable to both parties. So now you have that study abroad virtual and for free.
That's awesome.
Most importantly, for free.
My son this is his freshman year in high school, and he's hating the fact that it's virtual. He's hoping that they're going to be able to get everything set up. The swim team tryouts are supposed to be in a couple of weeks, so he's hoping he's going to actually get to see a person at some point soon. But they had something similar to what you were just talking about, where they combine their English and civics classes and look at some of these issues that are being written about in literature and being lived, in current and past times. And fuse them together, and they have projects that cross over. And he has found that to be his most enjoyable class. You know, his dad's a science and math geek, and he's here in the English lit and civics, just lighting it up. So he's really enjoying that.
Find institutions that had strong supply chain programs as well, and the director of the program said, Justin, it would be better if you found a class that's nothing related to supply chain. She said, for example, we took a business class and mixed it with an agriculture class, and the project. So it was an agriculture class was in Colombia, I think, somewhere Colombia or somewhere in South America, and then the English class or the business class was Penn State. So their end of course project was to understand the economics of chocolate, because we're close to Hershey, right? So they kind of modeled it to say, okay, you have a project for Hershey to look at the economics for Hershey,
right,
if you will, or the sustainable practices for Hershey down in Colombia, something like that. So it's two unrelated classes, two unrelated programs, and you're coming together. But I mean, that's what happens in business, and right. It's a beautiful thing.
It is. Listen, you were telling a story a little bit earlier that I wanted to circle back to. You were mentioning how you were teaching supply chain management, and you were teaching, and then all of a sudden there wasn't really a transition, but you just said, and then I built this supply chain management program for one of the schools I was working for. Mm-hmm. And then you started talking about how you were publishing and getting your brand out there, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering, how would you describe those two things and how they interact? This big thing that you did, and then the branding of that thing in terms of getting those positions to start rolling in, because after those two things, it seems like that's when the positions started coming in, the way you were telling the story.
Absolutely. Okay. That is when those positions begin to roll in, because people, I would post things about the logistics and supply chain program at Carolina Wesleyan College, and then individuals would share it, and then other individuals would share it. I mean, if you all, are familiar with LinkedIn, you found some amazing articles that your peers have shared, and you've shared it and liked it and things like that. And,
right.
That's essentially how you get noticed,
okay.
when the right person likes it or the right person shares it,
right.
That's whenever people say, who is this Justin Goldston guy? But that perfect example. So I did a and podcasts are huge too.
Yeah. And
I did a podcast for SAP. So SAP is the largest ERP vendor in the world. And I did a podcast with SAP, and the co-founder for this blockchain startup contacted me. And she said, I was listening to the SAP podcast, and you said one thing at the very end. It's like the last 30 seconds, she said something and said, who is this guy?
Yeah.
So I look at your LinkedIn profile, and then you have the Georgetown Roundtable, and I listened to that one on YouTube. I said, I have to figure out who this guy is. I liked that. She said she reached out to me on LinkedIn. We got on a phone call, and we've been talking for like 3 months now. As a matter of fact, I got a podcast with her in 30 minutes. So I mean, I tell my students, I say LinkedIn is the most amazing website on the internet right now from a professional development perspective, from a branding perspective. I did a number of TED Talks last year. 2 of those TED Talks came through LinkedIn. Just because of building that personal brand.
Right.
So and I tell my students that you don't have to write articles on LinkedIn. If you're in the industry and you find those thought leaders in the industry, mm-hmm. and you share those thought leaders' posts, then those people, those decision makers in that industry, you're getting noticed to those people.
Right.
Right. And another thing that one of my students did, and she actually blew me away. She blew me away so much, I asked her to come speak at my TED event. So what she did was, she would listen to podcasts or listen to webinars,
okay.
and she would provide summaries for these webinars and podcasts, and now the podcast host would see that, and they would like that. And they would say, who is this person?
Right.
Now she's being invited on podcasts to speak.
Yeah.
Now she's being viewed as a thought leader. Now she's doing a TED Talk.
So there's a lot of just gold in there. I mean, number one, you go out there and you do this personal branding, not just if you're an entrepreneur and you're trying to grow your own business, but it helps get you into large institutions like Penn State.
Yes.
Regardless as to what you want to do, this personal branding is important. The lady that you just spoke about, she was giving in order to get. You go out there and start giving, and before you know it, it's coming back to you. So that's another thing. And a lot of our doctoral students understand this. They want to serve, but so hold off until you get your dissertation done. We want to get you graduated, but then go out there and serve in those areas that make sense. Write about it. Let folks know what you were doing. Let folks know what you learned, and it'll come back to you. Yeah.
So and that's another thing where whenever I was invited to speak at so I did the Global Women Leaders in Supply Chain Conference. I delivered a keynote at that conference.
Okay.
It was the who's who of females in supply chain in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so I delivered the keynote there. And I would say I delivered my keynote at 4:00 in the morning. I was invited to 2 other conferences by 11 o'clock, the same exact day.
Wow.
And once you publish that, okay, I spoke at the Women Leaders in Supply Chain Conference. Then someone else shares that they liked your conference. Then you post that they liked yours. It's that's how that branding comes up. And now I'm posting that, okay, I'm speaking at this conference. I'm speaking at this conference. I'm speaking at this conference. And then that's whenever, if you're in that paid speaking thing, I'm not. I'm just here to share knowledge. I'm here to share knowledge. And just like Dr. Strickland said, I always tell my students, the money's going to come. I'm not worried about it. I'm just sharing my knowledge. And I would say that I say this time and time again, that if I'm gone tomorrow, nobody's going to say, man, Justin made a boatload of money. No, I want them to say, man, he made an impact.
Yeah.
And that's all I want, because the money's going to come. So that's just my thoughts.
And something that really drove this home for me. One of my podcast guests several weeks ago, he had this thing that he said, that legacy is what people. It's not what they say about you when you're dead and gone. It's just what they say about you when you're gone. Like when you leave the room, when you walk away from a group of people at a cocktail party.
I like that.
And that, if you think about it that way, when he first said that to me, that actually hit home, like right in the heart. I was like, legacy isn't something we do later on and we get to at some point. It's what you're doing now.
Yeah.
So I think that's really important to get some immediacy to this for folks.
That is an excellent point, because I will absolutely admit my industry, Justin, they're going to say, man, he's a jerk. But now I'm here to serve. I'm here to serve. I'm here to share my knowledge. I'm here to be able to teach your leaders. Like I said, I'm completely transparent, and like I said, that's what I say, where 85, 90% of MBA students, they're there to make more money.
Right. Exactly.
They're there to make more money. Let's just be real, right? And that was my mindset. But with that doctoral degree, I did go into the mindset to say, I want to serve. I want to share my knowledge, with these future leaders. Like I said, that one day when I was at Morgan State University, that was it. That was the point right there.
How did that go? So after you heard crickets, what did you do to them at that point?
Again, I'm transparent, right? So I said, look. I said, y'all are a couple of weeks away from graduating.
Yeah.
I said, just because you have an MBA does not mean a job's going to land in your lap.
That's right.
I said that you are about to get into the competition of your life in about 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
You are about to get into competition with the Whartons, with the University of Maryland's, with the Penn States, with the University of Michigan's, with these top institutions in the world.
Right.
I said, Morgan State is an amazing institution. I said, but just put it in perspective. If you were looking at resumes and you see a master's from Wharton versus Morgan State, again, I'm not knocking Morgan State, not one bit. I said, but just think. I said, who do you think they're gonna look at? If they only got to pick 2, right? And I'm the first first person to say that your academics is just one aspect of it. It's what you've done in the industry. It's the service that you perform. But the majority of hiring managers are going to see that word. You know, so that's why I say you have to go with a plan, and you have to go in with a mindset to say, I'm about to go to battle.
Right.
But on the flip side, I will say that there's enough jobs to go around. There's enough money to go around. Some people will argue that, but there's enough jobs to go around. There's enough money to go around.
I think that's true, and I think that that's something people need to understand. Now, that first one can be very difficult, and so what would you tell those folks at Morgan State about getting that first job when they are competing against folks that, honestly, we're going to be real about it. Hiring managers are going to see a lot of applications, and the very first time through, they're going to make some easy decisions.
Right.
And there used to be an old saying way back when that nobody ever got fired for hiring IBM. Same thing's going to be true for you. You go into candidates from top institutions. Right. No one's going to look at you and say, "Why did you pick this guy?" You pick something a little further down the list in terms of the research institutions, and someone might ask them, "Why did you pick this guy?" So how do you overcome that if you're just hitting the job market?
I would say it comes down to differentiators. Mm-hmm. So differentiators is that, so for undergrads, it's that internship experience. For master's students, it's that industry experience. It's that IBM experience, right? Yeah. And once you get into that master's level and that doctoral level, now you're getting into certifications. Now you're getting into those research publications and things like that. I know that you're to say, okay, you get your dissertation done, you can do the publishing later. But again, I mean, that's you got to find. You don't have to publish, but if you kind of have an opportunity, I would say based on the industry you want to work in, based on your discipline, get those certifications. Because perfect example. I was hired as an adjunct at another institute, a brick and mortar institution. And they said, Justin, you were the only person that did not have a doctoral degree in supply chain management that we interviewed. She said, but your certifications are the reason why you're sitting here right now.
Right.
And I got the job. Right.
Because once you're sitting there, then you get to shine through. Right now, it's not your resume. Now it's not the application.
Absolutely.
Now it's you.
Yeah.
Hire people. But
that's been my mindset.
Get interviews, right?
Yeah, and that's been my mindset. Once I get that screening call, it's a done deal. You have to have that confidence. You have to have that mindset. Once they say they want a screening call, it's done. It's done. Because if you have that confidence, I think that it's going to benefit you. It's going to show through, and it's going to show your passion and enthusiasm for that job and for that institution and for that role.
Yeah, no, 100%. So now, when folks once they earn their doctoral degree and they've gone out there, maybe they've gotten their first job. Do you have any advice for how they set a trajectory and move through their career? You've gotten to where you think is your dream job. What would be your advice for somebody who has gotten their degree, maybe gotten that first step on the ladder, but then they want to keep going, want to keep climbing?
I would say, and once I got to Penn State, I was like, okay, what's next?
Yeah.
Right? It's like, this is my dream job. What's next?
Yeah.
But and as I explain to my students, I always say, you can work for Tesla, you could work for Google, you could work for IBM. I say, you don't get complacent. I said, I got complacent in my first job. I got complacent, and I was traveling a lot, and it got to the place where I was almost a zombie. I would travel. I would go to my clients. I'd fly home on Friday, mow the yard, wash clothes on Saturday. I'm back on a plane on Sunday.
Yeah.
I did that for years and years and years. So I got that mindset. It got ingrained in my brain, and I got complacent. And but because I didn't have a plan, I didn't have a goal.
Yeah.
Right. So I would say yes. Once you begin that career, have a goal. I would say have those stretch goals.
Yeah.
Have those stretch goals. Have those goals that you think are unattainable. I thought it was unattainable to teach at Penn State.
Yeah.
I thought it was unattainable. Right. But I think that that work ethic and I would say putting the work in, because a lot of doctoral students, again, I'm real. A lot of doctoral students think that once you get that degree, everything is set. But if you put the work in, it's set. If you put the work in, it's set. But there is still, in my opinion, I think that the work just begins once you defend, because now it's time to serve. Now it's time to serve. So I would say that developing those stretch goals, I think, is my.
When you're talking about stretch goals, Tony Robbins says that people vastly overestimate what they can do in like a year, and then vastly underestimate what you can do in 5 to 10 years. And I think that's really, really true. When you think about the long arc that we have, I mean, life is short, but there's still plenty of years there. You should have some planning time, not just for what you want to do this quarter and next quarter and this year, but what do you want? Where do you want to be in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years, in 30 years? And if you're making those plans, that's how you can be intentional about where you end up, right? We don't just walk out the door, start driving the car, and end up at our destination. We have now we're punching into GPS, right? You got to kind of do that with life.
Yeah, and so when I look back on it, and somebody actually asked me that like 3 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. They said, "Justin, what's your end game?"
Yeah,
I said, "I want to be the biggest name in supply chain management." And they said, "What?" I said, "Think about it." I said, you may not reach that. I said, but if you have that mindset, you're gonna be pretty doggone big. You're gonna be pretty doggone big, and you're gonna make a huge impact on the world in the process. So that's why I have that stretch goal. That's why I have that mindset.
I think it's important. We use that phrase stretch goal with our dissertation students as well. We look at let's get this thing finished in 12 months. And that's difficult. That's not everybody does it. But by setting that stretch goal, those who fall short, who don't finish in that period of time, they still get really, really close. They've gotten a lot further down the road than they would have. And we get other folks that knock it out of the park. It's 8 months, 9 months, done. So yeah, setting those goals and then trying to meet and exceed your goals is important as well.
I should have came to you. You should have reached out to me on LinkedIn. You should have reached out to me about 1.5 years ago.
I might have. I got to look at our
look at chat history.
But you're right. So, Dr. Goldston, I know that your time is valuable. You've got some other things going on. Tell folks how they can reach out to you. If they wanted to continue this conversation on any of these fronts that we talked about today.
I would say the best way to reach out to me was going to be on LinkedIn.
All right.
My email is J as in Justin, L as in Lee, G as in Goldston, 566 @psu.edu.
All right. We'll make sure we get that in the show notes for everybody. Dr. Justin Goldston on LinkedIn is the way to reach him. This episode again has been brought to you by Dissertation Done. So if you're starting to work on your dissertation, in the middle of it, frustrated with it, whatever the case may be, let's have a talk about it, see what we can do to get you to graduation as soon as possible. Go to dissertationdone.com/done. And if you are done, like Dr. Goldston just said, you're not done. It's just the beginning. If you want to go out there and do that personal branding and get to the next level, there's no better way than having a first name of a doctor and being a published author. Let's help you with that second part. Go to dissertationdone.com/book and let's get you published. All right. So thank you once again, Dr. Goldston. I had a blast. Thank you so much for joining me.
All right. Thanks a lot.
All right. You're welcome. To everybody else out there, go out and live your unconventional life. Have a great day.
This has been An Unconventional Life. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, subscribe now to keep getting inspirational stories of unconventional lives as soon as they're released. Until then, go out and live your best unconventional life.